I notice most of you guys are not subscribed to my channel right now. I would really appreciate it if you consider subscribing.
Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome back. Listen, I figured we'd do today a little controller tier list, and I know what you're thinking, Brian, don't you hate tier lists? Aren't all tier lists garbage? Yes, all tier lists are garbage. They're just for fun. They're just so that you can either validate your own feelings or get pissed off that someone disagrees with your opinion. That said, go ahead and get all your upset comments out of the way, get them in the chat, or get them into the comment section below. But really the point of this is really to put a wrap around my opinion on what controllers are good for Street Fighter, focusing mostly on 4 and 5, and the pros and cons of each controller, because we all know there's been a big debate around arcade sticks, hitboxes, and regular bolt pads for consoles. So let's break down the pros and cons of each controller and rank them in a tier list today. All right, you know we got to start off with the defaults, the thing that started it all. Good old-fashioned arcade stick. All right, this is the first one we'll be breaking down a little bit. So I wanted to go into the pros and cons of each controller, and we'll start with the pros for arcade stick. Listen, it's a classic. Arcade stick is what it all started on. This is what the genre was initially intended to be played on. You know, you had all 4 cardinal directions controlled by the lever there on the left side, and you generally have at least 6 to 8 attack buttons. You know what? Arcade stick is cool. You look cool playing on an arcade stick. It feels badass playing on an arcade stick. Usually the buttons have a lot of clickety-clackety action sounds, so that's really awesome. Clickety-clackety. That was one of the big pros for me coming from playing pad originally. There's also clickety-clackety effects on the arcade stick itself. Now, if you play square gate, then this is the reference I'm judging with here, square gate. If you play octogate, you're deducted a few points here for cool points and for functionality. And if you play circle gate, then your stick should be burned in fire. So I'm going to be basing my pros and cons here based on the default square gate arcade stick, right? So let's get into some actual nitty-gritty pros. When you're playing on arcade stick, one of the big things that's important is the button layout, the action layout. I think having all of your attack buttons be equal in action is very good. So equal action on all buttons, right? So compare this to something like a PS4 pad, a regular pad. You have all these different buttons on the face and on the shoulders and the triggers here, and they all activate at different actions, right? Some buttons require more depression than others to activate. So I think this mattered a lot more in Street Fighter 4 than Street Fighter 5, because in Street Fighter 4 and in other fighting games that have really tight link timings, that is really important. I feel like it's a bit easier to do techniques such as easier to blink, consistent timing on links, Street Fighter 4. So I think it is slightly advantageous on arcade stick compared to something like a pad, something with the button layout to have that sort of action across all the buttons. I think certain techniques are easier on this, so you can do things such as pianoing. I don't know if you spell it that way, pian. I spell piano? Why is my brain saying that's wrong? Piano-ing, whatever you want to say. So doing things like Honda hands, electricity, and Gen hands when you're looking at the older versions of the game that required 5 inputs of attack buttons to activate those moves. In Street Fighter 5, I believe they reduced all the mash type moves to 4, so it's a lot more viable on pad. In Street Fighter 4, that was a big deal, right? Same thing for like sliding for these mashed out moves, or common technique with Gen in Street Fighter 4. He would have crouching strong to hands. You would start on crouching beating punch and just slide left to right, and that would give you the 5 inputs, which is something that you couldn't do on PS4. Like I said, not as relevant in Street Fighter 5, very relevant in Street Fighter 4. I think what you'll see is a lot of the changes made in modern Street Fighter games make arcade stick less and less relevant. Spoiler for later on. Any other techniques here? So let's see, easier techniques on the lever. So there are actually some advantages, I think, to the lever. The big thing is intuitive, for sure. Whenever you think of the motion inputs, the directions you have to input for a fighting game or a special move, it's always mapped to a shape. An arcade stick, if you do a quarter circle forward for fireball, it's very easy to visualize tracing the quarter circle. You go down, down, forward, forward. So there's a very easy geometric pattern to follow for you to intuitively get what the motion is describing on arcade stick. So that is definitely a huge one. But I also think that certain motions, like if we compare to non-leverless, things like half circles. I think half circles are much easier. How about this? Blurs your inputs. So the thing about arcade stick that's big is that you don't have to precisely input the directions you're trying to do. You need to approximate the shape. So if I need to do a half circle, I can very easily swing my stick around, and as long as I start hitting some of these points when I'm, making these very ungraceful and maybe over-exaggerated shapes with my arcade stick, I'm hitting extra directions, I'm not being very precise with it. As long as I get the general shape, it will guide you with the gate and allow you to get the input, right? You have basically guardrails. You have the bumper plates like you do when you're going bowling. So that's definitely, I think, an advantage of stick. When you do leverless inputs, you have to precisely type in your code. It's like dialing in a code versus tracing the shape. So sometimes having the guardrails to help you color in the lines is really useful for doing some of these larger inputs, for sure. For sure. All right, let's get into some cons here. One big con is it's huge. This is going to be a common theme. But if you play on a pad, dude, pad is just, you put it in your pocket and you go. It's a big thing, it's a big commitment, it's hard to move around, all right? So that's definitely a drawback. Kind of expensive. I mean, this is kind of a, I don't really know if I agree with this point too much. A PS4 pad, regular pad are cheaper. However, they often don't last as long. If you get a good stick, it's definitely durable. I think the value of a stick is better than a PlayStation pad for sure, but the upfront cost is higher. Let's get to the actual lever. Lever is slow, okay? Dashing is slow. You have to travel 1,000,000 miles, 8,000,000 miles to move from neutral. So arcade stick, you flick it, it returns to neutral. It has a spring, which is a great feature, right? This is actually a pro because you automatically return to neutral. But when you dash in Street Fighter 4 or 5, you have to hit forward, return to neutral, hit forward. So this doesn't seem like that much motion, but compared to this is actually a million years. So it is objectively slower to dash using a lever on a button of this height. It'll always just be this action. It'll always be yay fast. And that really manifests itself in a huge difference in how dashing behaves, especially in a game like Street Fighter 5, where dashing is so critical to the meta, right? Also, one thing that this is another silly one, right? It's loud. I remember thinking about this very heavily. I used to play 801 Strider a lot at tournaments. We'd be in a silent-ass hotel room. You can hear a pencil drop. It's just us playing. He would check all of my dashes with Balrog, and Balrog is a good dashing character. And I slowly started realizing, like, dude, you're hearing me dash far before I actually dash. And I saw him play like Travis Styles and other pad Balrog players, and they're able to sneak dashes on him. And I realized on pad, you can't hear them dashing. You can't hear it. it's silent. And I realized, dude, like not only are my dashes objectively slower, they're telling them in advance. So, you know, ideally in competitive play, you wouldn't be side by side or you wouldn't be in a quiet room, you need to be head to head so they can't really hear it that well. But 100% hearing your dash will make a difference. Like it sounds stupid, but it really does change. Audio cues are always processed faster than visual ones. That's a real thing. So it actually kind of does matter. So yeah, lever, kind of the inverse of it blurring your inputs. The lever is less precise. There's zones between the gates where, you know, your arcade stick is not in the fully pressed position where you're in the corner, you're in the corner of the gate, you're pressing directly to the cardinal direction of left, right, up, and down. But like you're returning back to neutral, it's still holding that direction for a period of time, right? There's action to all of your directional presses and releases. Also, you don't have access to opposite direction, which will become a big deal later on in this video. There's no SOCD. So SOCD stands for, say it with me, chat, simultaneous opposing cardinal directions. Woo! Everyone's favorite topic. You're limited by the physical analog input of the lever, right? So as I'm holding left, I can't also hit right. Not every controller is like that. So the stick, the lever, is unique in the fact that it is totally restricted in this way. We'll see why that is in a bit. There's other components you can think of in this piece of hardware, but honestly, arcade stick is mostly good. I think it has some drawbacks, and it doesn't have the pros of other controllers, but it is classic, it is solid, it is the go-to controller for the vast majority of fighting game players, and it does definitely get the job done, and it's the most fun to play on, in my opinion. I still think arcade stick is by far the most fun. So for our first controller, I'm going to throw arcade stick into a solid A tier. It's good, has its drawbacks, has its pros, but it's definitely not S tier. Definitely not. All right, let's get into the next one. PS4/PS5 pad. We're just talking about the default pad that comes with the console that we're playing on. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty between PS4 and PS5 and Xbox 360 and all that. I'm just doing a basic overall pad overview for Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5. So let's go over the pros. So we mentioned this in the arcade stick one for reference, right? So like a big one is D-pad is fast. D-pad is exceptionally fast for moving around. Dashing is hella quick on a PS4 pad. You just press the button. Moving around, going from left to right, also has less action than a lever as well. Travel time is much shorter. You can also, you can get your fingers on top of it and quickly depress opposite directions as fast as possible. It's just a lot faster. There's less travel time on a D-pad. It's very, very quick to do your action. This also means that your movement is more precise, right? So one thing I didn't touch upon with the stick is the fact that because you can walk forward and then go to back, you can do things like walk very small amounts of distance and then block. If you can walk and block effectively in Street Fighter, you can change the spacing in a much more effective manner than someone who can't. Imagine like someone's zoning you, you're able to gain a little bit of ground before each fireball and block it, and then walk forward and block on reaction, walk forward and block. You can start pressuring them and move closer and closer. If you can't walk forward and quickly press back, what's going to happen is you're going to walk straight into a fireball, block too late, get hit, get knocked back, lose health, and lose ground. So effective movement, like just subtle walk and blocking, is huge for high-level gameplay, and the D-pad is 100% more effective at that than arcade stick. Absolutely. Let's also do some of the obvious ones. I kind of glossed over that. Listen, it's light, small, easy to carry, comes with your console. So the D-pad, honestly, I think this is the big thing. I just think the D-pad is definitely superior in a lot of situations than arcade stick, but there are some pros and cons to this as well. But I just think movement and dashing are so much better in Street Fighter on pad. Now, one other weird thing is you can also do SOCD tricks, because not only do you have the pad, if that's not your cup of tea, you can use the joystick here, which is pretty much like a lever, an arcade stick that you control with your thumb. It basically operates mostly the same way, but it's like a circle gate for an arcade stick. So you could use that, but you can also use both at the same time in Street Fighter 4 and 5. And I know the comments are like, oh, nobody does that, Brian. You've already been ranting about this, SOCD tricks on pad. Nobody does that. People do it. People do it. They do it. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean people don't do it. Most of people are not good at Street Fighter. Most people are not competitive players. I know competitive players that do it. You don't know that. So I just have to throw that out there because I always get this argument that people don't do that. People do it. They do it. So an example I put out is with Guile, you can do a flash kick input where you hold down on the D-pad and then you do up on the joystick here, the analog stick here, and then do flash kick. That gives you a perfect flash kick, where basically you never stand when doing your flash kick, and it lets you duck underneath things and punish things that you otherwise cannot do without doing this trick. So an arcade stick cannot do a perfect flash kick. It just physically cannot. But pad can, because you can use both these directional sticks, and there's other techniques as well. But there's certain SOCD tricks that are used in competitive play by certain players that you have access to. So that is a pro of PS4 pad. Any other pros here? I just think it being light, the movement is definitely the main thing for sure. Cons. Different action buttons. So this is not as big a deal in Street Fighter 5, but the fact that you have these face buttons that have different action than the bumpers and the triggers adds a level of inconsistency, which can make things pretty hard for timing precise buttons all at the same time, right? It's pretty easy when you have the same relative time to activate your buttons like on an arcade stick. And in a game like Street Fighter 4, where there's very tight link timings, I feel like that was a bit of a challenge, a bit awkward to get over. However, it's not that big a deal. Like, just look at somebody like Smug, who is the Dudley in Street Fighter 4, doing one-frame links all over the place all day. He played on an Xbox 360 pad, so obviously it's not the end of the world, but it can make things like timing your links a bit awkward, and also doing techniques like plinking a bit harder, because you have to plink between different buttons with different actions. Because Street Fighter 5 has the very generous link buffer, I feel like this is not really that relevant at all for Street Fighter 5. This is definitely more relevant for tighter link games like Street Fighter 4, and it also probably won't be relevant for Street Fighter 6, to be honest. Yeah, the pads themselves, they break often. SOCD tricks are limited and a little awkward. So yeah, you can't do every SOCD trick that you could do on, say, a hitbox. You do have access to some, but yeah, I do agree that it's not the most intuitive thing. So it's not like hitbox level SOCD tricks, but it's definitely up there. Oh, I can say that charging can hurt thumbs. I've heard this complaint on arcade stick. You have a cozy home for down back to hold charge, but I've heard some players complain that charging can hurt their thumbs. I know Idom doesn't like charging, and Punk doesn't like charging on PS4 pad because it hurts his thumbs. But I also know a ton of Guile players who play pad. Kaba plays pad. He's one of the best guys in the world, bar none. So it's not really that much of a deterrent, but it can be maybe a little less comfy than arcade stick, because holding down back on arcade stick does feel good on a square gate. It is home. So that could be a little bit more stressful on your thumb to constantly be pressing down back like that. But yeah, also Knuckle do plays PS4 pad, so it's not that big of a deal. It's a minor thing. I think it might be a little bit more cozy on arcade stick. But really, that's about it. I think pad is an amazing controller for Street Fighter right now. I think it was a little bit less beneficial in Street Fighter 4 because dashing wasn't as critical in that game, and also because links were tighter in that game. I think arcade stick benefited from having the different face button layouts like that, and I think that was, you know, a big deal in Street Fighter 4. But Street Fighter 5, I think Street Fighter 5 is meant to be played mostly on this controller. This controller is so good for so many things in Street Fighter 5. The movement, the buffering you can do for things like SPD, the SOCD tricks, the fact that there's a big buffer in the input leniency, so you don't need to worry about link timings. Pad, I think from now until the future, is definitely going to be an S-tier controller. I think pad is superior than arcade stick in the current generation of games. There could be some characters that benefit more from arcade stick than pad, but I think overall, pad has more uses than arcade stick for sure in the modern generation of Street Fighter. All right, we're getting into the next big one, but before we get to that, if you're still watching the video, I do appreciate that. Most people have dropped off by now, but you stuck around. So if you're enjoying the content, feel free to subscribe to the channel. We're getting real close to 90K, which means we're getting close to 100K subs. So if you enjoy what we do here on the channel, you want to subscribe to support that, I can really appreciate that. And you can leave a comment in the comment section here saying blue toad rabbits. Let me know that you made it to this part of the video. I'll be looking out for that. But that said, we're getting into, you know, the final territory. We're going to be talking about it. You know we have to talk about it. We're going to talk about the hitbox. But before we do that, let's call out some honorable mentions here. Let's talk about this thing. I don't know what you can call this. This is what people used to refer to when they say pad. Back in the Street Fighter 4 era, it was so uncommon for people to use this thing. Oh, fight pad. Thank you, chat. Fight pad. It was less common for people to use the default console controller than it was for them to use this thing. This type of fight pad has definitely died off a lot since the Street Fighter 4 era. It's not common anymore. They have all the attack buttons on the same face. They have the same action here, and people would actually play the thumb on the D-pad, gripping it like a normal controller, but right hand over the top, pressing the buttons. I've seen that. You can do either using your thumb or over the top like that. To me, it's like kind of an outdated controller. I don't know. It's a weird type of controller to me. I've never used one of these. I don't see these too often anymore to do this. I just want to give a shout out to this thing. It has a D-pad. That's the big deal to me for Street Fighter 5. For Street Fighter 4, I totally get this button layout for doing certain techniques, like we mentioned with arcade stick, the pianoing, the sliding, things like that, and having equal access to the link timings. So I don't know where I would throw this on the tier list, but you know, this is still sort of around. Just not really talking about it anymore. I'm just gonna throw it in B tier because it's around. I don't know. B for I don't know. All right, we have one more honorable mention. It's the Korean style bat top lever. Now, if you're using this controller, you're playing the wrong game. Either you're a very confused NRS Mortal Kombat boomer and you're wondering why the button layout isn't like an X shape, or you should be playing Tekken. This is 100% an arcade stick for Tekken, and I'm not going to speak onto the effectiveness of pad versus Korean lever for Tekken, but yeah, I don't know. Don't use bat top for Street Fighter. I don't have any good reason to say that, other than you'll get weird looks. That's all I'll say about it. Honestly, it could be great. I have no idea. I've never played on one of these. It's generally used for Tekken because I think for the movement options in Tekken, they like to have a lot of recoil on the stick to do things like Korean backdash and dash block and things like that. So it's good to have like the recoil on the bat top, and I believe it's because you can slide your hands off it more easily. I don't really know. Not a Tekken player, not a Tekken expert, but yeah, if you play one of these in Street Fighter, it's just really unusual to see, to be honest. We'll throw that in the honorable mentioned category. Actually, no, we'll put that down here. Don't use that for Street Fighter. All right. You know what time it is. Time to talk about really why we're making this video. The Hitbox, aka the leverless controller. Hitbox is the name brand for the most recognizable leverless controller, which I think is a bad name for this category of controller because it's defining the controller by what it doesn't have, which is a lever. It doesn't have the arcade stick to lever here. Instead, it uses buttons, all independent buttons, just like the attack buttons, to define the movement for the controller. It is definitely a controversial controller. Let's talk about the pros for it, which will unveil the controversy here. Pros. It has individual actionable buttons for all directions. So you have independent access to all directions at once. So if you notice something with the arcade stick and the pad traditionally, you can't do things like press left and right at the same time or up and down at the same time. However, there is nothing physically stopping you from inputting these directions at the same time and sending that information to the game. So that allows you to do certain things that many people argue are not only not intentional by the developers, but almost cheating. Like people say this is cheating. I don't really agree with that. In my opinion, I think the software needs to handle this, but people go so far as to call it hitbox, cheat box, and these types of controllers actually cheating. We can talk about a bit about why that is. We'll bring this term up again. SOCD tricks. Okay, remember simultaneous, opposing, cardinal directions. Now it could be opposite. I would say opposing, and I misspell everything, so don't roast me for my spelling in the comments, please. So SOCD tricks. We mentioned it before. Doing things like perfect flash kick. That is a huge benefit to a hitbox. This big red button down here, the big one, is just begging you to press it. This is the up button. Left, down, right, up. And what this allows you to do is you can do things like hold down, and then you can press your attack button and the jump button at the same time. So you hold down, while you're holding down, you can come over this side, and you can just press your attack button and the jump button at the same time. That easily. Normally on arcade stick, because of the travel time, you go down, you go to neutral, then you go to up. You're actually standing up, then your special move comes out. That means that your flash kicks are slower on arcade stick, and they're also more susceptible to being jumped in on because you stand up on hitbox. You go from crouching immediately into flash kick. So you can also punish things that are actually impossible to punish without that because you skip that standing frame. There's many advanced techniques for perfect flash kick. Another thing is inputs, shortcuts. Normally on arcade stick and pad, you can only hit these directions one at a time, left or right, up or down. You can't do both at the same time. What should happen if I hit left and right at the same time? What should happen if I hit up and down at the same time? Well, if you send those raw inputs to the game for Street Fighter 5, if you do left and right at the same time, you actually always walk towards the opponent. And if you hit up and down at the same time, it gives you up. On hitbox, if you hit left and right at the same time, at the hardware level, it cancels out the input and you're just standing still. That means that pressing left and right at the same time gives you nothing. You add up these shortcuts together, the fact that this gives you nothing, you start getting weird situations where you can do super by holding forward and just tapping. Now, if you follow along, it's forward, and then you hold all three buttons, left and right gives you nothing. While you're holding it down, all three buttons give you down. This ends up giving you super. So I don't want to get too derailed in all the nitty-gritty of all these weird shortcuts, but because of the L plus R equals neutral input, this results in many different input shortcuts for things like CA, DP, etc. There's many different input shortcuts where you can actually shave off the number of inputs required physically, because you can kind of exploit both the input interpreter and the SOCD tricks to shave off the number of directions you have to hit. Objectively, once you get good at it, you objectively shave off the number of frames it takes to input certain things. 100%. That is the big deal. So the next thing is movement is the most precise. This is huge. We talked about walking and blocking with pad already. Take that to the next level. It is next level with hitbox. So once you nail and learn the execution for movement, your walking and blocking is way more precise. You're wiggling around. It's way more precise. You cannot compare the movement on hitbox to arcade stick. It is just vastly superior movement. It is more challenging to learn and to implement, but your movement is 100% more precise. And that's really about it. I mean, I guess I could say this. Charging is more precise, which is why it's a perfect guile controller. Going from left to right on a charge move, you can instantly release the button and go back to charging right away. So because there's no travel time, when you lose your charge by activating a sonic boom or a special move like active forward, you can much more fast English, because you can go from left to right and then release your button right away and immediately go back to charging. You can much more quickly go back to charging after releasing your charge by activating the attack. It's not comparable to arcade stick. That travel time reduces the amount of frames you have to charge. So you in fact can unlock certain situations where you can get access to charge and do certain punishes or certain like zoning sequences that you just cannot do on arcade stick. It's not easy and it's not like that game breaking, but you for sure get access to techniques that you can't do on arcade stick and pad at the very highest level. It's also good for other characters and other styles as well, but like there's no drawbacks at all for playing a character like Guile. It's just perfect for a charge based character with a flash kick. Like there's no drawbacks whatsoever. So you play Guile, you should definitely play hitbox 100%. Let's talk about some cons, because believe it or not, I do think there are cons to hitbox. I've been playing it for over a month now, and I still have a lot of challenges with this controller. The highest tier complaint I have, it's non-intuitive. Okay, so we talked about how cool that stick was. Stick was very intuitive. You kind of get it, you kind of map out the shapes, and you draw within the lines, and you're happy, right? Hitbox is not like that at all. Instead of having any kind of geometric shape to map to when you do a special move, you're basically dialing in a code. You have to learn the code. Quarter circle forward, it's very strange, right? It's down, forward, forward. You have to learn the code. 1, 2, 3, right? Half circles, 1, 2, 3 to do. So rather than just tracing the shape, I have to move my fingers all independently and memorize the input, especially when I'm doing like the SOCD shortcuts. The inputs don't make any sense. There's no shape behind them. So it's very non-intuitive to learn different things. Also, it's very contextual. So what do I mean by that? Your last input will very heavily influence how you do your next input. Because there's so many SOCD tricks and so many shortcuts, they don't all work depending on what you were previously holding. Like if you're holding certain inputs and then you try to go to another input, you might have different options to do your next input, if that makes sense. It's getting really complicated, but you'll understand that based on what you're currently holding, the next code you got to remember to dial in to do your next move will vary. So it becomes more complex, I think, in a lot of ways. You have to learn a lot more different ways to input the same move. So it becomes pretty bloated, I think, for a while. So it takes a decent amount of time to learn, and I think the high skills, you'll get like the first 80% of your strength on a pad or stick on hitbox in a month, but then that last 20%, there's gonna be situations where you're gonna not know how to do things. Like it's very hard to do things on the fly on hitbox, and you're gonna realize there's a lot of gaps in your knowledge of how to execute certain things. So specific things that are difficult, half circles, right? I've said this before, it's not just a half circle. Half circle you just roll across, right? That's a half circle. But if I'm holding down back, or I'm holding forward, and then I need to quickly do a half circle in another direction, it's difficult to stop your current action, then quickly do a large sweeping motion like a half circle or a 360, right? Because you don't get to just swing your arcade stick around, you have to dial in the code. It can be very difficult because you have to also, this is a big one, negative edge. You have to time the releasing of your directional inputs. If you input the direction you intend to do, but don't lift your finger off the other direction, it will mess you up. So I'm holding down back, then I need to do a quarter circle forward. I can't just start pressing forward. I have to release these fingers, then go forward, and then go back down with them. That is very, very difficult to do on the fly and really quickly when you're not very experienced with it. On an arcade stick, you cannot do that. That is not something you have to worry about. You have to spend a lot more mental energy to pull your fingers off the directions and then place the next one and have it all synchronized. So you're constantly worried about releasing buttons, right? So that will lead to other things, like you'll realize your fingers are weak. Your ring finger will be your detriment. Dashing to the left by pressing left will be a big problem for you. In fact, it's such a big problem for me that when I dash to the left, I don't even dash to the left with my ring finger. I do a stupid shortcut where I hold left and then I do this. Because for some reason, if I hold left and then tap right, it'll give me a dash left. So once again, my weak finger means I need to learn an SOCD trick that is non-intuitive to get what I want. Do you understand how this is all coming together? All these points, it's all very weird. It's all very weird. And then you're gonna have to, min-max your focus here on like what kind of shortcuts you want to use. Is your finger strong enough? All these things all come together. You're using a lot of brain power on this controller. A lot. But that said, these are cons. I don't think if you play a character that is a ton of half circles, like I know we don't have this character in Street Fighter, but Gold Lewis from Guilty Gear is literally all half circles. I would never in a million years wish on my worst enemy for them to play hitbox Gold Lewis. It is designed to be used with the intuitive nature of tracing the directions on your arcade stick, right? So characters that use a lot of these, I wouldn't recommend. Charge characters, 100%. Characters with basic quarter circles and all that, your movement will be better. The benefits definitely outweigh the cons. I mean, there's so much potential with this controller, so many high-level tricks. Like you can really push the limits of the game with this controller by having access to all the different inputs. I think the skill ceiling is much higher on this controller. But definitely certain things become easier on hitbox, and certain things become harder. But regardless, I think there's more potential. Even if there's also really, really difficult potential where it'll be harder to, impossible to reach on stick. Very difficult to do on hitbox, but that potential is there. So if you're interested about pushing the limits of the game, this is the controller for you, in my opinion. Now, like I said, because of those limits, some people think it's cheating. I don't know, it's legal in CPT. I don't think it's cheating. In my opinion, as long as you have one way to input every individual direction. But yeah, definitely an interesting controller for sure, causing a lot of controversy today in the Street Fighter scene, and that's why it is an S tier controller. And you know what? I still think pad is almost as good as hitbox. I'll put them in the same tier. Maybe Hitbox would be number 1. I think Pad's movement is just behind Hitbox. It still has access to the big things like perfect flash kick that Hitbox offers, just in a less ergonomic fashion. But Pad has so many other pros. I mean, it's so simple. It's a small, lightweight, intuitive controller. Half circles and 360s are very easy on it. It's very grappler friendly if you play grapplers. And I really think that Pad is an awesome controller for modern Street Fighter games. I really see no reason to not use it. Unfortunately, I think arcade stick's kind of bummed. It's the funnest controller to play with, in my opinion. But I think either one of these controllers are the ideal one. I'm gonna use arcade stick for certain things, for sure, still competitively, because I don't feel like relearning Pad. But I just think Pad is better, and I think Hitbox is better. But no matter what you play on, the most important thing is that you play on whatever is fun and comfortable for you. That's what's important. And that's my controller tier list. It was really just an excuse to break down my thoughts on all these controllers, and hopefully you found that enjoyable as well. As always, if you enjoyed the discussion, enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. It really does support the channel and helps me out a lot. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. Gotta get my zoning set up. I might have to switch. It's not like I like the raw Birdie matchup much more either. No, I'm not doing Hitbox, because I'm gonna try to win today. It's not gonna be easy. This round's gonna be really hard. I think this one is more stacked than...
Wow, the new Dragonflight title screen! It's so pretty!
Yeah, it is. Although I can't help but feel like there's just something missing.
Oh, I know. It needs a dragon. Like, this is the Dragon Isles expansion. It needs a big-ass dragon to swoop down and land, like in Wrath Regatta.
You are absolutely right, Evie. Stay there. I'm gonna make this happen. Come on!
Tally, is everything all right?
Come on! Oh, hi, Evie. Yeah, it's fine. I was just gonna fly this dragon onto the title screen, but it doesn't want to move for some reason.
Did you collect all your dragon riding glyphs to level it up?
Yeah, of course I did. Also, what are dragon riding glyphs? Where do I find them, and how long will it take?
Yeah, that dragon's not moving, Tally. Sorry.
Don't worry, Evie. I've got an even better idea.
Are you sure this is a good plan, Tally?
Yeah, of course. What better way to fly than in a hopium blimp? Come on up and join me, Evie. The view is amazing.
Aren't hopium blimps kind of dangerous?
Oh, God, you don't believe all that nonsense, do you? I mean, it's true that hopium is an incredibly flammable gas, sure. And yes, there have been some truly horrific accidents involving it in the past, but it's perfectly safe collected together and stored in this massive balloon. As long as there are no major disappointments around to get caught on, we'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong?
Tally, look out for the...
Oh, no!
Man, this keeps happening.
Knowledge is power.
Hello, Internet. Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset. Taliesin, Evertel's Wondrous Wisdom Show. In a week where the leaves on the Wandering Ancients have turned orange, autumn is here, and we are officially on the run-in to Dragonflight, which now has a release date. The 28th of November this year. I know. And yeah, it's the same release date from that very believable leak that, to be honest, none of us had any reason to doubt. So it's not a massive surprise to anyone who's been paying attention. But you know what leaked Excel documents don't have, Internet? Absolutely banging release date announcement trailers.
The Dragon Isles have a weekend, and beckon the Dragonflight's home.
And this is awesome, because I feel like up until this point, Dragonflight has been really missing a trailer like this. Usually with a new expansion announcement, we get like the super cinematic CGI trailer and the features trailer that shows a bit of gameplay and zones and transmogs and has an epic voiceover from an important character who will feature heavily, or in Shadowlands' case, Bolvar. And now, finally, Dragonflight's version of this is here. Except kind of better, because we're months out from the expansion reveal, which means it doesn't have to bother with a list of features. Battle your way to level 70. Because everyone already knows them, so instead it's just some awesome hype using music from a band that might as well name every track they produce epic hype music for cool trailers, and which, I can't lie, first time I saw it, gave me a little tingle. And yet fine, I know, whatever. But you know what? I don't care how cynical you are. If you've ever enjoyed or cared about World of Warcraft, then you are going to be excited by this, and you are going to be excited in a couple of months before a new expansion, okay? It's okay, you know. It is okay to be excited. It is okay to enjoy being excited. And I'm not going to make any apologies for that, and I'm not going to pretend not to be excited just to look like a cool YouTuber. This shit is exciting, sorry, and don't worry, there's still going to be plenty of time to talk about all the stuff that's bad or wrong or worrying or just not exactly how I want it to be in the coming weeks. And in fact, in this episode, because don't tell anyone, okay, but we're going to trot out the trusty old new shit. I mean, beta news in a minute, and really get into it. But this trailer with a Nosdormu voiceover talking about returning home and keeping an open mind for what is to come, and how all that matters is this moment. And yeah, I know that's what he says at the end of the End Time Dungeon, and yeah, I know, I'm very worried about him making it out of this expansion alive too. With the dragons swooping merrily around the place, and Stony Tony going full on Toy Story when he sees the dragons coming. Alex Strauss is coming, everyone, back to your places, hurry! I just want to take a moment to doff my hat to everyone this together, because you are one of the all-time great Warcraft gameplay trailers. Thank you. I guess the reason I like it so much is that it just perfectly captures that feeling of hope and familiarity that kind of comes before any new expansion, really, but that Dragonflight has so far managed to evoke, especially in so many of us, and I'm sure everybody feels the same about that. Too soon? No! Can't wait for another rushed mess with an incoherent story and half-baked player-hostile features. Good looking for Nintendo 64, with or without woke language. Anyway, so if the seemingly legitimate leak that predicted the November the 28th date is right about everything, and there's no reason to believe that it won't be, we are looking at an October the 25th pre-patch release date, and that means we are truly into the final straight new expansion fog now, which means I better start making some class guides, but which also means that any day now, maybe a few hours after this video releases, it wouldn't be the first time we can expect some Warbringers-style animated cinematics to start rolling out, probably telling Dragony-type backstories like the Dawn of the Aspects and the creation of Dragfear, I imagine. And then not long after that, the music will start hitting the beta, and that is something I'm incredibly excited about, obviously, because that is when shit starts getting truly real. In fact, news and updates and changes to the beta are coming so thick and fast, it's kind of impossible to keep up. I highly recommend checking the Wowhead links in the description of this video for articles on subjects that may well have changed since the script of this video was written. It's all a little bit overwhelming, to be honest, which is why, today, I am proud to be enlisting the help of our old faithful friend, the Wheel of Shit. I mean, the Wheel of News, beta news, Wheel of News. So without further ado, let's give it a spin and let the fates decide what the most important news is for us to cover today. The new Threads of Fate system has been implemented into the Dragon Isles, and it's a massive improvement on the Shadowlands system, because now, instead of having to choose between doing main story quests or a more open sandboxy world quest world tour, it's basically both options by default. When you get to the Dragon Isles on an alt, assuming that you already have a max level character, then world quests are already available, and you can take your pick of zones to do the main story quests in any order you like, and not limited to one at a time, so, you know, just pick them all up. And don't forget that because Ian and Steve were unbelievably telling the truth in that roundtable interview we did with them straight after Dragonflight reveal, your dragon riding is account-wide, so the second you set foot off that boat, you can mount up on the Drake and fly off with as many upgrades as you have unlocked on your main. But also, like 95% of renown progress rewards are account-wide too, so as I was flying around doing world quests on my alt in testing, there were like loads of explorers backpacks to pick up everywhere, because my main had already unlocked that level of renown. My Tuskar fishing points were all present and correct. It was great. One small issue that I did notice was that on my alt, the renown progress for Tuskar and Centaur was locked. I'm guessing that you'll have to do a few campaign quests in the appropriate zones to get those going, which seems a little bit weird and contradictory. Overall, this is unambiguously the most alt-friendly that World of Warcraft has ever been, and not just in an opening patch, but especially in an opening patch. Just being able to soar off on a flying mount straight from the get-go feels like a massive leap forward in itself. I've said it before, but Dragonflight has this really great thing where its vibe is really old school and charming in a way that's reminiscent of like Mists of Pandaria, but there are so many other elements which simultaneously make it feel more modern and fresh than ever too. But yeah, the headline here is, and this is no hyperbole, this is officially the most alt-friendly expansion in WoW history already, and everyone's gonna be happy about that. Oh, just get rid of leveling, what a lose of time. Almost everyone. Okay, let's spin the wheel again. New in last week's beta build, the UI editor now has a snap to grid and align function, and yeah. That's good, thank goodness, yeah. Holy shit, this is going very well, isn't it? We are on an absolute roll with all the good stuff here. Let's spin the wheel again. The way things go in, the next one will be like free money or something. Dragonflight Season 1 begins on December the 13th, meaning that's when Mythic Plus, Ranked PvP, Normal, Heroic, and Unusual Mythic Rage difficulties will all go live with the first wave of LFR, like 6 months after that, and then 2 years or whatever. If you're a race to world first kind of person, and you feel several things differently, then basically none of the top guilds going into Mythic straight away on day 1 because they were too busy killing the last 2 heroic bosses, and this time, don't be surprised to see world first raid is prioritizing heroic and normal raids before even beginning the Mythic race as they try and bag their sweet tier sets. Because yes, all of the 2 and 4 set bonuses for every spec have now been revealed by Blizz, and they're actually pretty basic and boring, honestly. Obliterate and Frost Scythe have a 15% chance not to consume Killing Machine. Casting Earth Shock or Earthquake increases your mastery by 10% for 10 seconds. Sudden Death drop chance is greatly increased. Those were all 4 set bonuses as well. And no one's saying that they're not powerful, but they generally aren't super exciting, are they? And that's not me being mean, that's me basically quoting Blizzard, because that's apparently what they intended. That is not to say that we won't make more complex or rotationally impactful class sets in the future, but you'll find that these bonuses generally take a light touch on features like resource generation and cooldown manipulation. Another goal that came from wanting you all to have a chance to get familiar with Dragonflight's new classes is that we want these class sets to have minimal impact on your talent choice. And yeah, I guess I can understand the reasoning that everyone already has enough on their plate getting to grips with new talent trees at the beginning of the expansion, and the simplified round of tier set bonuses is specifically trying not to get in the way of that for now. It's a reasoning that met with massive support on the forums, where players were quick to praise Blizzard on their firm decision-making and great communication, as well as the fact that there are tier set bonuses in this raid at all, something that hasn't happened in the first raid of an expansion since Mists of Pandaria over a decade ago. So this is unquestionably an upgrade compared to what it was. No, this shit. These suck, lol. This fish. This half-assed shit to so bloody boring and predictable. What's the actual fish is this for? This rushed expansion is rushed. It's the first time tier set bonuses in the raid since Mists. But anyway, I hope the next subject on the wheel is something that follows on really neatly from this one. Let's give it a spin. Hope for the best. The Inspiration Catalyst, the new name for the Creation Catalyst, which looks certain to be placed on the console in tier hold, and which is the system by which you can convert non-tier Season 1 gear into tier set pieces. A process that Ian Hazzagostis had hinted would be changed in Dragonflight to involve crafters and professions, but which appears to, at this opening stage of expansion at least, be more a straight recreation of the mostly successful Shadowlands 9.2 version. I say mostly successful because Ian has said himself in interviews since that they regret making the Catalyst take so long to come online in Zereth Mortis, and expressed a desire to speed up the process in its next iteration. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Taliesin, this is the next iteration, so did they speed it up then? We're planning on keeping the unlock cadence the same to start. That is to say, the 6th week after Mythic Raid becomes available in Dragonflight Season 1. No, they didn't! It's the same! They kept it the same! F you! I guess you could say it's like a week sooner for Mythic Raiders, but that's only because Mythic Raid opens a week earlier in Season 1 than usual, so yeah, they kept it the same, and that was a shit show, obviously. Holy fish, the devs are so out of touch, it's crazy. Why are they doing this? They never learn! Meet the new Blizz, same as the old Blizz. Love to see how they're slowly trimming features, pushing things back to patch content, and stretching out what they have built so far so they can make their rushed release dates. Okay, to be clear on my position here, I consider the Creation Catalyst to be one of the best and most player-friendly additions to the game in like forever. Bad luck protection for raiders, which doubles up as a way for non-raiders to get here through Mythic Plus, PvP, and even open world content is brilliant. And I had a blast in behind P2, running as many of my orcs through Zereth Mortis, getting double legendaries and 4-set as I could. The Catalyst played a huge part in that, and it was probably the most fun I've had in WoW since the first weeks of that expansion. So I don't want to lose sight of what a great addition the Catalyst is with complaints, but yeah, I think I agree with Ian more when he said the opening cadence of Creation Catalyst was probably a bit too long, and I can definitely sympathise with the disappointed sentiments expressed here. But then it is a hard thing to judge and balance. For example, we don't know how drop rates will compare to Shadowlands yet. We don't know if the limit on Catalyst charges will be the same as Shadowlands, and those are both important factors in this conversation. But generally, I think most of us will be happy to see it open up in like week 4 or 5 after Mythic Raid drops. You forgive me for being impatient, you know. I just can't wait to get my hands on the what was this new peaceful saying? Oh yeah, penance increases your next power word shield by 100%. Can't wait for that. Like, I think we should get the Catalyst on week 1, just so that I don't have to wait for the penance doing the... No, I've forgotten what it does already, sorry. Let's spin the wheel again and hope for a happier time on the next one, eh? Okay, so I admit I only put this one in because it was getting a bit tense back there, but Watcher Karanos, star of the Dragonflight cinematic trailer, has been given a new voice line in the beta.
Why is it that every time I visit Wotlk, someone calls me Tony and points out that my body is made of stone?
And why is that cool and important, and especially important to me? Well, in case you missed it, here's a clip from my live stream reaction to the trailer at the reveal. Light the beacon! Light the beacon, Tony! What's his name? Tony? Yes, Tony. No, Tony! Don't worry about the beacon, Tony. Just survive! Oh, shit. No, Tony! Expansion ruined. Tony. Oh! Tony! Right! And look, I am not suggesting for a moment that Blizz added that line knowing that I had coined the name, but you know what? I don't care either way, because this is the closest I will ever get to having an NPC in-game, and if you can't get a Tuskar, then a beautiful stoic sand-faced Toy Story boy is the next best thing. I'm taking it. Stony Tony lives, and he's perfect, and I love him. I would literally kill for you, Stony Tony, and actually, I literally will, because he gives you a quest to go to the Halls of Infusion dungeon and, you know, kill stuff. So I will do that for you, Tony. I'll do the dungeon. Possibly the biggest news of the week is the return to group loot, not just as an option, but as a mandatory total replacement for personal loot in the new raid. Now, this is a major U-turn in philosophy for Blizzard, with the iconic need and greed roles making a return with it, if slightly modernized. And the thing is, I know you all wanted this, because I remember how angry you were when they took it away. So I know that the forum's going to be a buzz and echoing with joyous singing and laughter, and whoa, someone's wheeled out a piano onto the street, and everyone's dancing, and there's fireworks, and the crowd is chanting. Oh no, it's a shit show, obviously. Are they high? In what world would this work at all in any way? Stop this mess before it's too late. What a horrendous change. This is an absolute trash thing to do. Oh, it turns out that for everyone complaining about personal loot, there was actually someone else who absolutely preferred it to the system it replaced. Damn, I could never have foreseen that. Why did no one foresee that? And the thing is, it's very easy to see why people like personal loot. It takes a certain pressure away from the loot process, which, especially in pugs, is not just nice, but often vital to the functioning of an uneasy alliance between a group of complete strangers, which is only ever one wipe away from complete collapse. And even in our guild raids, I appreciate that personal loot means I only ever have to get annoyed and resentful at the stupid, idiotically low drop rates, and not my raid leader, who honestly is just trying his best, you know? It's one less thing to worry about, and it's probably better for human relationships, so I can definitely understand people who are personal loot forever. But in my opinion, there is no doubt, overall, as a whole, that the player base is massively in favor of a return to a more manual distribution method, or at least one that feels more manual. There are some interesting grief minimizing updates. Like, you can now only roll for your specific armor type. A warrior can no longer roll on a cloth item just because they can technically equip it. There's also main and off-spec functionality built in, so the player rolling on a piece for their main spec will get priority over someone rolling for their off-spec, which in turn takes priority over a greed roll. Most importantly though, all trading restrictions have been lifted. So gone are the days where you will not be able to give away a ring just because it's one item level higher than what you already have. And even after winning a roll and receiving the item, that item remains fully tradable until it becomes soulbound, which means raid groups who want to can basically recreate master loot by having all players except the master looter, I'm sure that's the correct term, master looter, pass on an item so that the master looter can distribute it as they see fit. Something which is definitely going to make a lot of people very happy indeed. And I think these are really sensible, good changes. Even if the trading restrictions change is something they could have applied to personal loot with pretty much the exact same effect. There's a part of me that thinks the group loot label and the needing and greeding process is kind of just packaging, you know, a psychological shift as much as anything. But there are definitely differences. The extra efficiency of players supposedly not ending up with loot that someone else could better use is the obvious advantage over personal loot, but that is offset by the fact that as loot is no longer generated specifically for players in the group, there's now a chance that something will drop that is useless to everyone. But yeah, that's just how it goes, big nose. Also new for raid loot is the introduction of what are essentially BOE mini bosses, which specific and often really good bind on equip items will drop drop from, and which you can kill and loot once a week like a standard raid boss, and which replaces BOEs dropping from trash. And I actually really like this idea. I think it's very interesting, especially if, as has happened in previous raids, those mini-bosses rotate week by week, or sometimes have their mechanics switched up. I think that would be really cool. I can't think of anything bad to say about it. I'm down.
Hey.
Be quick, Effie, because it's not just us here on the sofa today, is it?
No, yeah, we've got a lovely little baby just down here. We just got back from swimming, which is why I'm all wet.
Oh no, why? Why can't we just have a normal conversation?
You know why I'm excited, Tally?
Well, you can't say that. You can't say you're all wet and then ask me why you're excited. You know what they're like. You know what they're like.
These are two separate
Look,
trains of thought.
make your announcement and then get your actual breast out to feed our baby. Okay? Enough of this filth.
We are giving out 5 heroic dragonflight codes.
What?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's incredible.
Yes, 5 of them.
I didn't even know we had that many.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you, Blizzard.
Thanks, Blizz.
Thank you, Blizzard. But US people, no codes for you. Well, look, I can't help it. Don't blame me. Blame Blizzard. They only gave us EU codes, all right? Don't blame
Would you
them.
be interested in any of these 5 codes? Join us tomorrow for a stream.
Yeah, that'll be Wednesday stream.
Wednesday stream.
We have to announce this 24 hours in advance, so we'll put it on Twitter and stuff as well. But also, we know more people watch these videos than watch the Twitter and watch the streams. So if you want a heroic code and you want what do you get in the heroic code? Dragonflight. I'll tell you what you get. You get Dragonflight. You get early access to the Drakthea in free patch.
Nice.
You get like the really cool kind of leafy dragon mount.
Yeah, I love
which you
that.
can't ride in Dragonlance.
It's fine. Dragonlance.
He's not allowed in.
It's fine.
He's allowed in, but he's not allowed to fly there. Sorry, it's
haven't
like
yet.
sorry, foresty dragon thing. No flying for you, but you can fly him all over Oribos. Oh, you love Oribos.
I
You
love
have an
Oribos
amazing
so
time.
much. I'm gonna miss just the circle of running around Oribos so much.
Everyone memes on Oribos and how boring it is, but you forget that after like Zuldazar, and well, Zuldazar in particular, but Paralysis as well, which Zuldazar was a right pain to get around, and people were begging for something super simple
Yeah,
and what have
it's
you.
true.
But it's true, after 2 years, no, I hate Oribos. It sucks. I can't wait to be out.
Paralysis is the bomb.
It's been a beautiful Dragon Isles. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, riding my mount that can't even fly because I got it with my heroic edition, and so can you. You get a pet and stuff. Don't dream it. Make it happen.
Just make it
Watch the stream. We'll be giving away 1 every 20 minutes.
Nice.
No mucking around.
No.
I see some people they give them away. They do like 1 a day or something. I'm like, nuh-uh. No. By the time, yeah, we put a timer on. Everyone puts their name in the chat.
There
We
you go.
give that stuff away every 20 minutes,
Good.
and then we're done. Fish, bash, bosh. I go home. End of stream.
Well, actually, it's great to
Go
dinner.
in. Oh, yes.
We're getting a steak and oysters.
And that's why we're in a good mood. And that's why you can have them. So we're gonna keep them. I was gonna keep them, Effie. I was gonna keep them. I was like, I could use 5 level 70 boosts
Probably
or level 60 boosts or whatever it is.
Hold on, we may need to renegotiate it.
Me and an army of like flightless forest dragons just marching around Dragon Isles. That's what we could have done, but we didn't. We decided to give these away to you, our community, but only the EU ones. Everyone else. So be there at the stream tomorrow. It'll be brilliant. I can't wait. It's so nice to have you here. Everton, do you know how I'm going to celebrate this brilliant sofa? This amazing sofa section we've done here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on the thumbnail. Can you give me some shot? Can you interpret dance this? This changes everything. That's not the one we're going to use, but I love it. It's really good. Thank you, Evertel, for joining us today.
Thank you, Tally, for having me today.
It's a weird time on the channel coming up. As you know, we talked about this last time, but you can see lots of bricks behind me. Those going up on the wall this week. We're starting our class guide. The wall's getting painted this week or next. We've got painters coming in downstairs.
Yeah.
Oh man, our lives are upside down at the moment.
all over the place.
Dragon Isles is literally my sanctuary at the moment. It is true. I love it. It's so good. It's so beautiful. It's such an amazing zone. Such an incredible expansion. I know it's going to be a good expansion, okay? I don't, because you never know, do you, until like a year or whatever, right? But what I can guarantee you is it's worth a month sub. I guarantee you sub up for a month, you're going to have an absolutely awesome time.
Sub up.
And it won't cost you anything if you win the heroic giveaway, so
Well,
awesome. See you there. Thank you, Penny. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah, I know. And thank you for being here. If you like this video, don't think us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all our videos happen. It's the same coffee that I was drinking in the actual desk bit
I love that.
yesterday.
Yeah.
If you didn't like it, if you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Blizzard EU.
Oh, boo. I mean,
Yay.
yay. Thank you for all the codes. Truly.
No, my name's Sally Essen from me.
Me, Avatar.
And Penny. And a Nyrin. Where's a Nyrin? Cheerio. Effie, you're back, and just in time for Dragonflight.
I'm back. Oh man, it seems like ages since I've been in game.
Well, that's because of the time skip.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even though in reality you've only been away since 9.2, in game 3 years have passed since between when we killed the jailer and now.
Oh, what if I didn't kill the jailer?
It's fine, it's still been 3 years.
Oh, that's why it's felt so long. I've got to say, it's been great having all that spare time without any world-ending threats to get things done.
Yeah, what?
I mean, 3 years. I've had time to get my PhD.
You got your PhD in the time skip.
Well, not just that, obviously. I managed to finish my novel too.
You wrote a novel.
And get cracking on the sequel.
Oh, wow.
And write a screenplay for my novel.
Avatar, that's incredible.
Well, I mean, it has been 3 years. Oh, and I walked the Appalachian Trail. Always wanted to do that.
Me too.
You should have come, but I guess you've been busy for the last 3 years too, right?
Yeah, totally.
What did you do?
Well, I mean, I played WoW, like retail, but also classic and alpha and beta.
Oh, cool. Anything else?
Yeah? Elden Ring?
Yeah. Oh, did you finish Endwalker?
No.
Never mind. Did you get your driving license?
No.
Oh, did you manage to take a look at that broken pipe outside the kitchen like you said?
It's like the next thing on my list, okay?
Oh, cool. Well, I got to go do a lecture about 19th century haiku. Oh, yeah, I speak Japanese now.
Really?
Yeah, I learned Japanese.
In the time skip?
Yeah, it was actually really hard. It took ages. Anyway, I'll be back for the lunch. Sayonara!
Oh wow, she really can speak Japanese. Man, Effie is so amazing. It kind of makes me feel a bit unaccomplished. Maybe we should try and do something important and fulfilling before the time skip finishes.
Nope.
I don't know, Bane.